Today, we discover a story where a quiet life is shattered by an extraordinary secret. Samuel Washington, a humble hospital worker, loses his beloved wife, Lorraine, only to find she's left behind not just memories, but a hidden fortune meant to change the world. Shock turns to courage as Samuel faces elite families, social prejudice, and the pressures surrounding his son's high-stakes wedding. In a breathtaking moment, dignity triumphs over wealth, reshaping relationships and forging an unforgettable legacy. Lorraine's fortune becomes a force for good, sparking a foundation that lifts children and unites communities. Grief gives way to hope, as ordinary routines transform into lifelong impact, and one small family's love ripples through an entire city. Subscribe and hit like. Our powerful stories add years to your life. Join our Story Lovers Club and let us know in the comments, where are you listening from? Have you ever wondered how a single act of kindness can turn your entire world upside down? Imagine fighting every single day just to keep your family alive, working yourself to the bone in places where you are barely seen, until one unexpected decision shifts your fate forever. This is the story of Camila, a young woman whose heart was pure, even when her circumstances were not, and the hungry stranger. This high-class eatery glittered with the laughter of the upper crust, polished glassware winking beneath chandeliers, and bubbling wine poured into crystal flutes. Waiters in crisp uniforms glided between tables, weaving through an obstacle course of delicate egos and expensive colognes. But past all the rich aromas and forced smiles stood Camilla, 25 but aged by worry, performing a delicate balancing act between exhaustion and duty. Her eyes were soft but tired, underscored by the shadows of many sleepless nights. She carried herself with quiet dignity, hiding the turmoil within as she hurried from table to table, balancing plates of jollof rice, grilled peppered chicken, and steaming bowls of soup. Every careful step was a gesture towards survival, towards hope, towards her mother at home, who depended on her for life itself. By day, Camila had dreams of laughter without worry, of her mother healthy once more, of a life where she could rest without fear. By night, she was simply a waitress, invisible to the wealthy but indispensable to the one soul awaiting her at home, her ailing mother. Rent, medicine, and meals, they cost more than just money in Camila's world. Each naira she earned was proof that she would not let love or need falter on her watch. The noise in the restaurant was a comfort to some, but to Camila, it was simply the backdrop to her daily struggle. When her friend Elena, fellow server and confidant, glanced her way with a worried look, Camila's facade almost crumbled. "Camila, you look exhausted," Elena whispered, when their paths crossed in a narrow aisle. "Are you all right?" Camila's mouth twitched into a smile, but her eyes spoke only of fatigue. "I just need to finish this shift," she replied quietly. "My mom, she needs her medicine this week. I don't have the option to rest." Elena reached out and squeezed her hand for a fleeting second, empathy in her eyes. Neither noticed the way their boss's shadow darkened the marble floor as he approached. Mr. Jeremy, the Royal Palm's immaculate manager, was a man who wore his authority like a badge and his cruelty as a fashion statement. He seemed to glide rather than walk, his expensive Italian shoes gleaming as brightly as the cufflinks on his pressed shirt. To the restaurant's elite clientele, Mr. Jeremy was the paragon of refinement and efficiency. To his staff, he was a sentinel of harsh rules and even harsher words, never missing a crack in composure or a slip in standards. This evening, as the dinner rush reached its peak, Mr. Jeremy's eagle eyes fixed upon Camilla as she wiped down a recently vacated table. He stalked over, stopping so suddenly that the air seemed to still for a heartbeat. "Camilla," he said, his voice like a blade, quiet but dangerous. Camilla immediately straightened, her hand freezing on the white linen cloth. "Yes, sir," she answered, keeping her voice respectful but neutral. Mr. Jeremy's lips curled in a frown. "Why do you always look so tired?" he spat, barely moving his mouth. "Do you think customers want to be served by someone who drags her feet? We are a high-class establishment, not a shelter." His gaze bored holes through her, his words meant to humiliate. Camilla's pulse ricocheted within her chest, but she managed to compose her face, forcing an apologetic smile. "I'm sorry, sir. I'll try harder," she replied. Bitterness kept tightly beneath her tone. He leaned closer, voice dropping to a growl only she could hear. "We serve dreams here, Camilla, not reminders of hardship. The wealthy come to escape poverty, not to face it in the faces of their waitstaff. If you don't want to be here, leave." Camilla nodded, pride warring against necessity. She needed this job. More importantly, her mother needed her to have it. As Mr. Jeremy straightened and strode away without a backward glance, Camilla closed her eyes for a fraction of a moment, steadying herself. "I must endure," she reminded herself. "For my mother, I have to." That evening, the royal palm was a portrait of Lagos's elite. Men in smart suits toasted each other over cocktails. Women draped in gold jewelry fanned themselves and gossiped in velvet booths, and the air buzzed with the energy of money well spent. Camilla and the other servers moved like well-oiled machines, careful to avoid mishaps that might draw Mr. Jeremy's ire. But all at once, the scene shattered. The heavy glass door swished open, and an unfamiliar figure shuffled into the golden-lit room. Silence rippled across the restaurant, more powerful than the clatter of dishes. Standing just inside the threshold was an old man, his shirt careworn and fraying, his trousers riddled with holes. Age had bowed his shoulders and left his hair wild and untamed. He was barefoot, feet toughened by streets no guest here had ever known. In that singular moment, every fork, every glass, froze in midair. The rarefied air grew thick with disdain. Whispers erupted like gentle thunder. "Who let a vagrant in here?" sneered a woman in red, catching the attention of her friends with a swift gesture, as if trying to shoo away the scent of poverty. "He'll bring down the whole place," murmured another, wrinkling her nose. Even some of the staff lowered their gaze, embarrassed by his presence. But Camilla, balancing her tray near the wall, felt her grip tighten, her heart heavy with a sudden, inexplicable urgency. There was something about the old man's steady, unashamed walk that struck her. He exuded a confidence that clashed with his appearance. He didn't beg, didn't cower. He simply existed, as if he belonged anywhere he wished to be. The hush that swept the room was almost tangible, the air thick with judgment. The man's name, unknown to all but himself, was Joshua, a figure both out of place and yet curiously composed. As he strode further in, heads turned, eyebrows raised in silent accusation. Scornful glances darted his way. From across the hall, a young man dripping with arrogance scoffed to his friends. "If management doesn't throw him out, I'll never eat here again." His voice was sharp and full of entitlement, echoing off the marble fixtures. Joshua's response was wordless and powerful, a calm gaze that landed on the speaker and lingered just long enough to make the boy avert his eyes, his confidence shaken. Around them, a whisper spread that this stranger was a test, a breach in the kingdom of privilege. Meanwhile, Camila's friend Elena nudged her quietly, eyes wide with disbelief. "Are you seeing this? He's not even afraid." "Who walks in here like that, without shame?" she whispered. "I don't know," Camila whispered back, more to herself than anyone else. "But there's a strange kind of courage in him." She had met desperate men before, hungry, broken, apologetic. But this man's silence was different. It didn't beg. It simply asked to exist. At the bar, Mr. Jeremy's face had turned cold as steel. He gestured curtly to the security guards and barked, "Remove that man." This is bad for business. All eyes followed the guards as they moved, the tension in the room barely concealed beneath shuffling feet and nervous murmurs. Yet before the men in red and black uniforms could reach Joshua, Camila acted without thinking. A waitress invisible to the rich, suddenly visible to all. She stepped forward bravely, putting professionalism over fear, her pulse pounding as she met the old man's eyes. With the value of seconds ticking louder in her chest, Camila forced a gentle, welcoming smile, the kind she reserved for her most difficult guests. Ignoring the skeptical faces around her, she approached Joshua and bowed her head in greeting. "Good evening, sir. Would you like a table?" Her words, soft but clear, cut through the thick air with a sharp, unexpected kindness. The room was stunned. It was as if the act of addressing him as sir had rewritten the equations of class and compassion in an instant. A fork clattered against a plate. A gasp rose from somewhere behind the silk-draped tables. "Is she mad?" someone hissed. "Look at her, serving a beggar." Another scorned. "Even the staff is losing their minds now." But Camila stood firm, shame nowhere in her gentle eyes. For a moment, Joshua's hard expression softened slightly as he regarded her, a flicker of surprise, then warmth. "Yes, my daughter," he replied in a low voice, dignity threading through every word. A table would be nice. With measured care, Camila guided him through the sea of stairs, each footfall echoing a defiance she hadn't known she possessed. She chose a corner table, not a seat of honor, not a place of banishment, but a quiet dignity in between. Pulling out the chair, she said respectfully, "Please, sir, sit wherever you'd like." Joshua lowered himself into the seat, settling with a quiet confidence that belied the state of his clothes. She handed him a menu, the same menu offered to any VIP guest, with both hands. On the sidelines, Elena whispered, "Do you see how she treats him? Like a king. They'll fire her for sure." The fear was real, but so was the admiration. Camila heard only her own heartbeat as she waited at Joshua's side, ignoring the whispers, letting courage scrub out shame. Even Mr. Jeremy, rigid with shock and anger, was momentarily too stunned to intervene. For that moment, Camila was no longer a tired waitress or a scared daughter. She was a beacon of kindness, anchored in the eye of a brewing storm. As Joshua sat, a calm stillness settled around the small table he inhabited, almost drawing a boundary between the opulence of the restaurant and the vulnerability he carried. Camila stood beside him just a few seconds longer than custom dictated, her hand lightly tracing the top of a folded napkin, trying to steady herself against the hurricane of glares now pointed her way. She glanced at the menu with him, her voice gentle but deliberate. "May I recommend our signature dish, sir?"
People travel from far to taste it.
Joshua looked at the colorful list of meals, each item a rich tapestry of spices and flavors, names whose prices could feed a small family for a week. His eyes wandered off the page, searching Camilla's face for some hint that the world she moved in was really as closed as it appeared. "What do you find nourishing?" he asked quietly, a question whose depth surprised her. For Camila, food wasn't about luxury, but survival. "Jollof rice," she answered softly, "with grilled chicken and plantains. It's simple, but it gives strength." Joshua's smile was subtle, almost secretive.
"Then let's have that," he said,
setting aside thoughts of embarrassment or charity. The request felt like an ordinary act, transforming the exchange into something normal, almost familial. Camila nodded and moved swiftly to the kitchen window, placing the order with a determination that seemed to alter even the way the kitchen staff regarded her. Some rolled their eyes, others muttered about wasted food. Yet the chef, an older woman with silver strands in her hair, caught Camila's urgency and decided not to question her. She began the meal with extra care, adding a drizzle of spiced oil and a few more slices of ripe plantain than usual. While the food was being prepared, Camila found herself thinking about her own family. The nights she had carried leftover scraps home to her mother, the way hunger could humble anyone, regardless of station. She watched Joshua from a distance, his hands steady, his gaze never wandering with fear or shame. It was as if he had come from another era or another reality, where dignity was something you kept with you, no matter what the world took away. The room's mood brewed with speculation. Guests whispered, betting on how long the scene would last. The waitstaff murmured about repercussions, knowing that Mr. Jeremy's patience was ticking away like a time bomb. Yet Camila kept her head high, refusing to let anxiety poison this small moment of rebellion. And in that act, she discovered a secret joy, the kind that glimmers only when you choose to be brave, even while your world watches in judgment. When Camila returned to Joshua's table with the plate in her hands, she did so slowly, savoring the gravity of gesture. Every step she took felt like both a victory and a risk, for the silent gazes of expensive shoes and diamond necklaces pressed down on her like an invisible weight. She set the meal before Joshua, as if she were delivering it to royalty, her actions careful and precise. Joshua gazed at the food with an appreciation long denied him. The colors of jollof rice, the aroma of grilled chicken, and the sweet scent of fried plantains seemed to ignite a warmth in his eyes. "Thank you, my child," he said, voice low and textured by decades of gratitude and loss. Camila welcomed his blessings with a nod and stepped back, allowing him privacy to eat. Throughout the restaurant, this simple act of compassion rippled outward, unsettling long-held beliefs about who deserved dignity, who had the right to sit, to eat, to be seen. Some guests looked away, uncomfortable with their own reflections in the mirror Camila had unwittingly held up to them. Others, secretly moved, sat in silence, remembering moments when they too had needed mercy. Yet the tension could not last forever. Mr. Jeremy, finding his power threatened by Camila's defiance, summoned her with a terse gesture. She approached the counter, pulse rapid, her mind scrambling for words that would not betray her courage. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" he hissed, barely able to contain his fury behind a mask of civility. Camila met his stare, her own expression tranquil but unyielding. "Every customer deserves to be treated with respect, sir," she replied. "If there is any harm, it is in refusing kindness, not in offering it." Mr. Jeremy's expression contorted, caught between anger and a grudging recognition that the authenticity in Camila's argument could not simply be dismissed. He knew he would have to decide between enacting swift punishment or risking a deeper scene that might mar the restaurant's pristine image. "After your shift, we will discuss this," he threatened, voice ice cold. Camila bowed her head slightly, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. Inside, she thought of her mother, of the values taught in a modest childhood, the lessons about standing firm no matter how strong the gale. For those few minutes, she felt taller than all the customers combined. The work in the restaurant pressed onward, its relentless rhythms undisturbed by the current drama. Yet for Camila, the air grew richer with meaning as she went from table to table, her hands steady even as her heart trembled inside her chest. Elena, always watchful, moved silently beside her in a show of quiet solidarity. At one point, Elena passed Camila a folded note, tucked with care between a pile of clean plates. Camila read it under the soft shadows of the kitchen. "We see you. You are strong." It was unsigned, but the familiar curves of Elena's handwriting gave away its origin. Camila smiled to herself, reinvigorated by the reminder that in battles against injustice, allies may appear even when you stand alone. Back in the main room, Joshua ate without haste. He folded his napkin neatly, savoring each bite as if it contained all the flavor of dignity. To several staff members, this seemed extraordinary. The way he ate as if he possessed a hidden royalty, as if poverty had merely dressed him in humble disguise. Camila watched him, reflecting on Elena's quiet support and on her own struggle to keep hope alive. The world judged harshly, often mistaking vulnerability as weakness. But here in this crowded room, kindness was the rarest currency. If anyone else had chosen compassion, uproar might have quelled quickly. But because it was Camila, always tired, always tasked with the hardest shifts, her actions took on the quality of legend. Elena's whispered reassurances helped Camila stand taller, her resolve threaded with the courage of every hidden sisterhood that endures in hard places. She realized then, sometimes the best leaders are not those in charge, but those courageous enough to be kind while everyone else is content to watch. The meal slowly came to an end. Joshua wiped his mouth, folded the napkin again, and looked around the room one final time with the measured gaze of someone who understood suffering as well as victory. The hush surrounding his table had changed shape. It was no longer merely disgust, but tinged with curiosity and respect. Camila returned for a last check-in, asking if he needed anything else. "No, thank you, my daughter," Joshua replied quietly, pressing his palms together in a gesture of humility. "You have already given me more than most ever do." Suddenly, Mr. Jeremy's voice called out loudly across the room, his patience unraveling. "Camila, my office. Now." There was no mistaking the threat. Procedure had been broken, and the consequences would not be hidden. Camila apologized to Joshua softly and moved towards the door, all eyes now fixed upon her. Inside Mr. Jeremy's office, the energy shifted from glare to suffocating silence. The manager paced aggressively, fuming with wounded pride. "Do you understand what you've done?" he demanded, the words echoing off the sterile walls. "You've made a mockery of my establishment." Camila did not let the shame wrap around her. Instead, she stood her ground. "If kindness is a mockery, then maybe this establishment needs to rethink what it stands for," she replied, voice resonant with more conviction than she knew she possessed. Mr. Jeremy seethed, grasping for punishments that would fit his sense of outrage. "I could fire you, you know. You're just a waitress, and there are dozens who would take your place tomorrow." She nodded, silent yet unafraid. But deep down, Camila knew her family couldn't afford to lose this job. And yet she'd done what was right. After several tense moments, Mr. Jeremy dismissed her, admonishing her to carefully consider her future behavior. As she left, she wondered whether her act of defiance would ripple beyond tonight, whether her stance could be a beacon for any of her fellow staff living in the shadow of fear. Camila emerged from the office, the knot in her stomach tight but no longer suffocating. Elena was waiting near the kitchen doors, her face drawn with worry. "Did he fire you?" Elena whispered, eyes glistening with concern. Camila shook her head. "No, not yet." "But I think he wants me gone." Elena hugged her quickly and fiercely before either could be seen. "You did the right thing. We need people like you here, even if it's hard." Word of Camilla's confrontation with Mr. Jeremy traveled quickly among staff. Some feared backlash, others were emboldened. Even the chef who'd prepared Joshua's meal caught Camilla's eye and gave her a brief nod, a gesture of approval that warmed Camila almost as much as Elena's support. Out in the dining hall, Joshua lingered for a moment longer than anyone expected. As if sensing the significance of what had happened, he stood, stretched his shoulders, and walked to the exit. He turned back, locking eyes with Camila. For just a heartbeat, no words were needed. Gratitude, respect, and an understanding born from hardship passed silently between them. The wealthy diners, uncertain what to do or feel, muttered amongst themselves. Some scoffed at both Camila and Joshua, their prideful armor firmly in place. Others left in thoughtful silence, haunted by the possibility that generosity could exist even within luxury's walls. That night, as Camila finished her shift and stepped into the humid embrace of Lagos's night, she was changed. Her stride was surer, her spirit burning with hope and uncertainty. She crossed the busy avenue, her mind whirring with thoughts of her mother, Elena, and the stranger who had reminded her that being seen, a simple act, could set an entire world in motion. As Camila stepped out of the restaurant and into the humid evening air, Lagos seemed to breathe with her, its vibrant life pulsing beneath the neon signs, its traffic weaving through crowded lanes like restless spirits. The echoes of the day, judgmental eyes, whispered support, the soft defiance in her own heart, followed her along the cracked sidewalk, coloring each footstep with an intensity she hadn't known until tonight. Her worn sneakers pressed through puddles that reflected the city's fractured lights. Street vendors shouted out the day's last bargains, and distant radios filtered through apartment windows, the rhythm of Afrobeats punctuating her thoughts. The encounter with Joshua had left her shaken but strangely exhilarated, a cocktail of fear and hope battling sleeplessness inside her mind. As she hurried through the market road that led home, she passed clusters of women haggling over fabric, their colorful wrappers swirling in bright patterns. One, a grandmotherly figure with kind eyes and gold earrings, waved at Camila in greeting. Normally, Camila would nod shyly and continue. Tonight she paused. "Long day?" the woman asked, voice gentle as honey. "Longer than most," Camila replied. She wondered, should she tell this stranger about the eventful night? Instead, she smiled and said, "But I learned something important. Lessons are heavier than bags of yams," the old woman said knowingly. Camila laughed quietly, the words easing some of her tension. Moving on, Camila reflected on the characters who had shaped her day. Elena, steadfast in solidarity. Mr. Jeremy, powerful yet haunted by his own rules. Joshua, dignified and mysterious. The city itself seemed to mirror these patterns. Rich and poor living side by side. Kindness and callousness tangled together in the fabric of daily life. As she reached her apartment, a cramped one-bedroom where the ceiling leaked during rainstorms, she paused at the door, glancing up at the flickering bulb overhead. A deep breath steadied her nerves. She was almost home. Inside, Camila found her mother lying on the faded couch, eyes closed, breath shallow but peaceful. The room was sparse but clean. Camila's care showed in every folded blanket, every careful arrangement of medicines on the low shelf. A single bowl of rice and stew sat untouched on the table, evidence of Camila's morning efforts before work. "Mama," Camila whispered, setting her bag down and kneeling by her side. Her mother's eyes fluttered open, clouded but gentle, the way water turns soft before sunrise. "You're home late," her mother said softly, concern threading her voice with a tender note. "How was work?" Camila hesitated, her mind replaying the events, the old man's entrance, her act of compassion, Mr. Jeremy's threat. For now, she chose not to burden her mother with details. "It was different," she said, voice light. "But I met someone unexpected. It made me think about kindness and how sometimes we have to fight for it." Her mother squeezed her hand. "You always did have your father's stubborn heart," she smiled, half teasing, half proud. "You do what's right, even when it's hard." Camila blinked back sudden tears.
I just want us to be safe, she whispered, stroking the back of her mother's hand. Sometimes that means standing up for someone else, even if it risks everything. Her mother nodded, her touch radiating warmth. You grow stronger with every brave thing you do, she said with gentle certainty. Just promise me you'll take care of yourself, too. The shadows grew longer as they sat together, the night closing around them. Camila made her unspoken promise, not just to protect her mother, but to hold on to the courage that had guided her tonight. Whatever came next, she would face it with an open heart and steady resolve. Sleep was slow to come, haunted by anxiety and hope. Camila lay beside her mother, staring at the cracked ceiling, listening to the bustling city outside. What would happen if Mr. Jeremy made good on his threats? Job loss meant hunger, skipped medications, a slide back into uncertainty. Yet behind her worry, another voice spoke, a memory of Joshua's calm acceptance, Elena's note, her mother's support. Was it possible that determination could change the currents of fate? The world was harsh, but acts of compassion left ripples, and Camila was beginning to see their power. As dawn crept over Lagos, painting orange streaks on the walls, Camila rose, determined to prepare for another day, no matter what awaited her at the restaurant. She brewed weak tea and made toast for her mother, checking on her pills with careful hands. In the mirror, she studied her face, tired but stronger than yesterday. A small, brave smile broke through her exhaustion. If she was forced to leave the royal palm, what might she do? What skills, friendships, and values could she rely on? Would Elena stand with her? Would the staff rally around a cause, or simply duck their heads to avoid trouble? As she headed out, Camila tucked a small notebook into her bag, a habit since childhood. Perhaps she could start writing down the lessons of each day, the secrets of survival, the stories told by invisible people in visible places. Maybe, with words as well as deeds, she could forge a new path. Returning to the restaurant, Camila felt tension in every corner. Mr. Jeremy greeted her with a stiff nod, his authority apparently restored, but tinged with uncertainty. After yesterday's incident, the staff seemed divided. Some offered sympathetic glances, others avoided her entirely, afraid to associate themselves with rebellion. But Elena, her loyalty undiminished, quickly found her as they donned aprons in the break room. "I brought you breakfast," she said, producing a wrapped meat pie from her bag. "You need strength." Camila smiled, touched by her friend's continued solidarity. "Yesterday felt like a storm," Elena whispered. "But it changed people. I overheard the chef telling one of the older waiters that kindness is good for business. Imagine that." For the first time since the incident, Camila allowed herself to hope. Maybe, bit by bit, some staff and guests would begin to recognize the value of compassion. Maybe the act of feeding Joshua would echo. The day's first customers trickled in, and Camila found herself serving a nervous couple whose clothes suggested modest means. They eyed the menu warily, calculating how much they dared to order. Camila greeted them gently, offering water with slices of fresh lime, and met their anxious gaze with the same quiet respect she'd shown Joshua. Midway through the morning, a dignified older woman, who often hosted meetings here, caught Camila's arm and whispered, "You did something difficult last night."
My friend saw everything. Thank you. Camilla's eyes widened in surprise. Thank you for noticing, she said softly. The woman pressed a card into Camilla's hand. If you ever need work, call me, she said quietly and moved on. The gesture was both unexpected and thrilling, a new possibility branching off from last night's choice. The Royal Palms midday crowd arrived, bringing noise and bustle. Camila did her work with unusual grace, her confidence slightly restored by the morning's encouragement. The memory of Joshua, his dignity, his quiet gratitude, beat in time with her more hopeful heart. Near midday, a delivery worker arrived. He carried a box addressed to the manager, but also a sealed envelope with Camila's name in precise looping script. Surprised, Camila accepted the envelope and retreated to the kitchen, rushing through her break to open it. Inside, on crisp paper, a note was written by Joshua. Kindness is not weakness. It is the foundation of strength. The world needs both courage and mercy. You showed both. Never forget, you changed more than one heart. With gratitude, Joshua. The letter ended with a small drawing, a simple sketch of two hands joined together. Tears welled in Camila's eyes, and she pressed the note to her chest, letting its message fill the places where fear still lingered. Throughout that day, Camila noticed little changes. Customers greeted her with more warmth. Staff whispered encouragement more openly. Mr. Jeremy watched her closely, but kept his distance, perhaps unsure how to handle the unexpected consequences of yesterday's stand. By the time her shift ended, Camila walked home with new strength, her steps lightened by a promise she now understood. When one person chooses mercy, it can remake a world, even if only for a moment, even if only in a heart unwilling to be invisible any longer. Camila's walk home at dusk felt lighter, propelled not only by Joshua's heartfelt letter, but by the subtle but undeniable shift in the air at work. She'd always believed even small acts of goodness could plant seeds, but now she was seeing the first fragile shoots poking up through the hardened soil of her reality. That night, as her mother rested, Camila wrote in her notebook, her hand moving faster than ever, as she jotted down memories from the past 2 days. I was never invisible, she wrote. Even when people tried not to see me, kindness made me visible. Her thoughts flowed from the thunderous moment Joshua sat down, to the trembling courage in her own voice, to Elena's note, and the regular customer's surprise job offer. But what struck her most was the evidence of hope within herself. The act of standing up, as small as serving a stranger dinner, had set off events she couldn't predict or control. She wondered, could she finally dream of a future beyond mere survival? Later, as she peeked in on her mother, Camila shared her plan. I want to start applying for a better job, Mama. Maybe somewhere I can make a difference, and where kindness matters more than appearances. Her mother, half asleep, but alert to hope, smiled and squeezed her hand. You've earned it, child. Don't let anyone shrink your heart.
That night, Camila slept soundly and dreamed not of fear, but of possibility. Back at the Royal Palm, Mr. Jeremy paced his office, the events of the previous days gnawing at his composure. Camila's defiance had not only challenged his authority, but had begun shifting the attitudes of customers and staff, a change he wasn't prepared for. Some guests had quietly praised the atmosphere's warmth. Others threatened to leave. The staff felt emboldened, more willing to speak up for each other. Mr. Jeremy's principles had been shaped by years of running establishments for the privileged, where appearances mattered more than substance. But watching Camila, he saw that dignity and humanity had more power than he'd thought. People responded to genuine emotion, not just luxury. For the first time since he'd become manager, he felt uncertain about his own rules. Late in the afternoon, he found Camila alone in the hallway, refilling sugar bowls. "You're becoming the talk of the restaurant," he remarked, his tone somewhere between annoyance and reluctant respect. Camila looked up, unafraid. "I just did what was right," she replied, her voice clear. Jeremy hesitated, then said, "I thought strictness was the key to success." "Maybe I'm the one who needs to adapt." He almost smiled, the gesture surprising them both. "You haven't been easy to manage, Camila, but you made this place better than I could have." She nodded, understanding it for the olive branch it was. For now, the threat of dismissal faded, replaced by a possibility of change, not just for herself, but for the fate of everyone who worked in the shadow of his rules. As days passed, the impact of Camila's actions echoed more widely. The chef began offering leftovers to staff who looked hungry. Elena organized a small fund among servers to help with emergency medical costs. The regular customer who offered Camila a job called back, and they set up an interview at a non-profit aiming to empower women in hospitality. Camila walked into the interview with newfound confidence, her story spilling out with warmth and vulnerability, as she described the moment she'd chosen empathy over fear. The interviewer, herself a survivor of hardship, listened closely. "We need hearts like yours," she said softly. "Those who see the invisible and fight for change." The job offer came quickly. A junior coordinator position with better pay, benefits, and the ability to lift others as she rose. Elena cheered. Camila's mother wept with joy. The fear of eviction and medical insecurity faded for the first time in years, replaced by hope and opportunity. Reflecting on her journey, Camila realized the lesson was not just that courage wins, but that kindness must persist even in the face of threat. She wrote in her notebook, "Kindness is a revolution, and courage is where it begins." On her last day at the Royal Palm, Camila arrived with a grateful heart. She greeted her colleagues, helped Elena stack glasses, and thanked the chef for her wisdom. Even Mr. Jeremy shook her hand, his sternness softened by honest admiration. But what filled Camila with a quiet joy was Joshua's return. He entered during the lunch rush, this time better dressed, face radiant as he approached Camila's station. Many customers looked pleased or curious, but none witnessed the depth of their reunion. Joshua thanked her again, pressing a small cloth-wrapped bundle into her hand, a keepsake, symbolizing gratitude. 2 carved wooden figurines, hands joined. "You let me see the world with dignity," he said. Camila stayed at his side while he ate, exchanging stories and laughter. She learned more about his life. A former teacher whose own health and fortune had declined,
but whose spirit remained unbroken.
"Sometimes," he said, "we need someone to remind us we belong. And sometimes, that someone belongs everywhere they go."
Joshua's words stayed with Camilla long after they hugged goodbye.
She knew her next chapter was beginning, full of uncertainty but also promise. Camilla's first day at her new job felt surreal. The nonprofit's office was filled with women from many backgrounds. Waitresses, teachers, mothers, each carrying their stories and hope. Camilla started work training junior staff, sharing both practical advice and her own story of defiance. Her mother's health slowly improved thanks to new stability. Elena visited often, bringing recipes and gossip to their modest but now happier home. Camilla's life changed not just through one act, but through every choice to see and lift others. Lagos remained vibrant and unpredictable, but Camilla now moved through its streets with clarity, pride, and the knowledge that she had sparked real change. Her story became the foundation of training talks, newsletter articles, and quiet inspiration for many. Proof that the invisible can become unforgettable. And every night, beside her journal, Camilla placed the carved figurines as a reminder. Kindness is strength, and strength is the foundation of every future worth building. The path ahead would never be easy, but Camilla knew now she could walk it, visible, powerful, and unafraid.